And you are watching SCW, the wrestling channel here on youtube.com. Hi, my name is Steve, and I'm joined today by George Jones. We're going to be talking about SCW Rewind. We're going to be rewinding and going all the way back to March 28th in 1999. That's right, we're going to be talking WrestleMania 15, giving a retro rewind review for you today. Of course, it's WrestleMania week itself, so it's great to look back at the old WrestleManias and give our viewpoint. So today we've chosen WrestleMania 15 as it's the high point of the Attitude Era and a great time within wrestling. And before we start, I'd just like to get George's thoughts on what we're going to be talking about today, because you've been actually watching a lot of 1999 recently, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for having me on the show again. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of 19. Quite interesting to watch it like now, just to compare it to the current product. There's a lot of stuff that's a bit questionable, which is always the way with WWF. Vince Russo clearly was prevalent throughout most of the booking here. You can see a lot of it, but it's been a fun watch. It's great to see the evolution of certain wrestlers, particularly as they go towards this main event, which, as you said, when we discussed the main event, the amount of interest that probably around the wrestling world at that point in '99 is for the brief. You can see why this main event probably is one for the ages. I still think that even today it holds up as a quality main event.
It really does, actually, and we will, of course, be discussing that main event in length later on. And for those that just want to know the superstars that are in it, to give them that intrigue and a reason to stick around, of course, we're talking Stone Cold Steve Austin against The Rock. So two of arguably the biggest names ever in wrestling history were the main event of this WrestleMania. So we're going to start things off like any good pay-per-view off. Of course, it's a kickoff show, but back then it wasn't the kickoff. We had a weekly show each and every week. Sunday Night Heat was taking place at that point, and of course, this was at the stage where Sunday Night Heat also had its main event players, didn't they, George?
Yeah, they did. You're getting the big ones. You're getting Stone Cold Steve Austin here. You even got Paul Wight, Vince McMahon. It just says it's a reason to watch. You can clearly tell this is a great starter course to the pay-per-view. I think it was very fun back then. I remember the days of having Sunday Night Heat on Channel 4 and just the kicking into sort of the main shows as such. It's a great funness. I look back at these kickoff shows.
Yeah, certainly indeed. And like you said, I mean, one thing as well, key to this as well, the arena was full. Everybody was there in high spirit, high voice. The signs are ready at that point, already for the kickoff show. So, I mean, these days we see these big stadiums and half empty when we get started on the kickoff shows. Not the case here. In fact, we even kick off the first thing of Sunday Night Heat where Vince McMahon and Paul Wight, the Big Show, coming down to ringside. We see that a big statement was made for the end of the evening as well. The main event, Stone Cold versus The Rock, was going to be a no disqualification match, a stipulation added just 1 hour before WrestleMania was to begin. As well as that, of course, they were making references to the previous week's Monday Night Raw with the match that was involving Stone Cold, Steve Austin, and Paul Wight. I do believe that a sleeping giant had been awoken in Paul Wight, and he was going to be arguably the special guest referee if he'd won his match with Mankind, and he was adamant that Stone Cold, as the bottom line, he would have the last word, and that he was actually going to wait for Steve Austin to return, to turn up at the arena backstage, and was actually going to sit on a steel chair by the back door entrance. What were your thoughts when watching this? It obviously gives some excitement and intrigue and storytelling just to kick off the night.
You're starting with a bang, and look at the amount of heat Vince McMahon got for the crowd. You can tell people just generally hated him. The amount of work done on that point to get everyone to hate him. It was an amazing way to start the night. You're clearly starting with the whole Austin can't do it, which is a great underdog story. I think it was a great way. And the fact you got Paul Wight there. Paul Wight at that point was very fresh. He'd only been signed since February at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view where he debuted. But no, it's a great way to start the event. You're starting with a ban. And ultimately, you're in the main event, at the focal point of the reasons why to buy the pay-per-view. Because obviously back then, we didn't have the network. So you'd have to have bought it on pay-per-view.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's another key difference of back then. Of course, like you said, there was no WWE network. The luxury we have today of getting things for just $9.99. Obviously, we like you say, there was a lot going on already at such an early stage. Even Vince McMahon seemed a bit reluctant with what was going on with Paul Wight. He did say to him backstage, like, I need a main event here. It's WrestleMania. Like, don't, leave some of him for the main show. Of course, with a lot of the main superstars involved in WrestleMania itself, the matches themselves on Sunday Night Heat were not so much to talk about. We did get a match with Jacqueline and Ivory, two of the better wrestlers in the women's division at that stage. Of course, Jacqueline was part of a team, if you want, a stable with Terry Runnels, the PMS gimmick that was going on at the time. Jacqueline did pick up the victory with was just a simple back suplex But I think what's most interesting was what happened after the match with Terry Reynolds putting a cigar in Ivory's face. Of course, Ivory had a connection with D'Lo Brown at this point, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. They were a fairly good tandem. As I said, not a bad way to start the opening sort of match of the event, so to speak, on the show. It was a very interesting match. I didn't think it did much, but the two wrestlers are very solid. I thought Jacqueline and Ivory both were very solid workers, so I wasn't unhappy to see it. And I didn't think the match went on too long. I felt it was a very quick match.
It was. It sort of went straight to the point, didn't it? They got where they needed to and got out, and it was almost just it felt like a proper warm-up match for what was coming up ahead. We had D-Generation X all in there, but hyping up their matches for WrestleMania at that point. I mean, for me, not so much to discuss here, but did these matches give anything for you to hype up more for them for WrestleMania?
Not really. I think you knew kind of what was to come, but it's always great to see DX. I think DX at that point were very vocal, and I think it's great to they were getting that rub on the pre-show, if that makes sense. It just shows you, because obviously they were clearly a vital part of the WrestleMania card, so it makes sense to see them on this part of the show, really.
Certainly does indeed. And they're all involved in separate matches. So 4 matches they were discussing here at this point of what they were doing later in the evening. We got next a Battle Royal, which was actually had an impact on WrestleMania. Basically, we had, I don't know, maybe about 15, 20 guys in there. And the last 2 were going to be made into a tag team to go against the tag team champions, which at that time was Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart. We had many superstars involved in this battle royal. We had 4 members of the Ministry of Darkness, which I believe was Viscera, Midian, and the Acolytes. We had D'Lo Brown, the Godfather, Darren Drozdov. We had Test in there. We had the Hardy Boys, which at that point Hardy Boys were not at their peak. They were sort of like the jobbers, if you want, on a super, a superstars or whatever was going on at that time. Yeah, I mean, we had lots of different characters in there. Tiger Ali Singh was another one in there. So I mean, there was a real sort of like jobbers area, but it got everyone on the card, which was a nice way to see it. I wonder what your thoughts were of this battle royal.
Yeah, it was a bit of a mess. I kind of think, as you said, it was great to see everyone on the card. If you look at the people that was in it, I think realistically, I thought watching it that you'd only really get either like a Public Enemy who were in it win. Maybe the Acolytes were in it or not were in it, could have won. And maybe we look at it, you had too much in there as well. And you had also Skull and Ape and people like that. It was very much a job about Raw. But then, interestingly, Gilbert was in it, which I thought was a really random addition, which I kind of laughed at. I think that was a sort of hit on SCW at that point, just to show Gilbert would only be so low on a card. I think the real highlight for me wasn't actually the winners of the battle royal. It was Owen Hart on commentary, the great late Owen Hart. He came out with a fantastic one-liner sort of towards the end of it, going, "These have been wrestling for 20 minutes," when really they'd only been wrestling for 4 minutes. And I just thought it was proper comedic, really.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing. It felt like everyone was just being thrown straight over the top rope. And one team we've not even mentioned was the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom.
Oh, yeah.
One strange part was Hawk with hair, spiky hair at that point. It was a very rare part of his career that I remember him having that sort of look. He always had the sort of like the horseshoe kind of style, didn't he? Going around his head a lot of the time. But here, full on spiky hair. Just thought it was give that an honourable mention from the late Hawk. But like you said, we come down to the final 4, and the third and fourth place finishers actually eliminated themselves, which is the Godfather and Darren Drozdov, which left our final 2 people, which was D'Lo Brown and Test, who were going to be a team. Test was part of the Corporation, which was a heel stable, and D'Lo Brown, I believe, was a face at this point. No, it was not.
No, you're right. Yeah, I was just.
Oh yeah.
So it was
a very random sort of tag team at that point. And the only thing I had with this that was my problem with it is that it just felt no proper team here was involved in the tag team title match, and that just kind of made me feel a little bit like that the belt's not so important at this stage.
I agree. I think the problem you've got here is it's a throwaway. The fact you're going into WrestleMania and you don't have like number 1 contenders already built up in a feud, for me, it just seems to be a massive waste. But the fact that you've got Test and D'Lo Brown was a fantastic worker in my opinion. Test, it's just weird. The face and heel dynamic doesn't really work. And when you find these two together, when the fact you've got other teams such as the Acolytes that are in there, the Road Warriors, as you said, it just doesn't. It's a no-brainer. I really don't get why they kind of did this, but I kind of get it. It's community value. It does build on what they did earlier with the whole sort of Jacqueline and Ivory thing. I get that sort of builds on that, but for me, I was pretty disappointed to see him win. I was sure that we were going to get Godfather and D'Lo win, so when that didn't happen, I was shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt the same. I had Godfather and D'Lo in my mindset as well. I know that they were a team the following WrestleMania, actually to kick the show off at WrestleMania 2000. So I think that's possibly why you had that thought process at the time. We move on to the Big Boss Man, who was having an interview, and he had said that he was used to being in a cage. The Hell in a Cell was no stranger to him, and that the Undertaker was in for some hard times. The lights went out. I believe the Undertaker was doing a voiceover over the whole arena. The lights came back on to find the Brood, who were of course part of the Ministry of Darkness, attacking the Big Boss Man and leaving him in a pool of blood. This was a very interesting twist, a last-minute build towards the event to WrestleMania to give it some intrigue. Did it have that intrigue for you?
Yeah, it was certainly iconic. The fact we got a bloodbath so early on into the night, it was surprising. But I get the last-minute bias to try and get the people interested in the Undertaker Bossman feud. That does make sense. It did what it needed to do, really. I think it was great filler TV.
It certainly was. And to finish off Heat, just so that we can go on to WrestleMania, of course, Big Show, Paul Wight, I should say, was waiting for Austin all through the night. Of course, his opponent arrived, Mankind, which led to a brawl between these two. And then quite comedically, Austin actually turned up while this brawl was going on, looked one way, went, okay, and I'll carry on back to the backstage where he needs to go. So Paul Wight did not get an opportunity to soften up Mania. I thought this was a very comedic segment. It was interesting, entertaining, and was a perfect way to take us into WrestleMania.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. It was very fun to watch. I may have liked to have seen Rock and Austin have one final chance to be out there to duel on pay-per-view and to duel about the pay-per-view beforehand. But I think other than that, I felt it was a great way to kind of get Austin into the building. They overcame that hurdle they built earlier in the show. And Mankind and Wight, it was great, really. I think they worked really well together. I think they're quite comedic to watch. And I think Mankind at that point was such a risk taker. He would put his body on the line relentlessly.
Yes, certainly indeed. It was very much interesting stuff there. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And for Sunday Night Heat as well, before the show kicks off, like we say, a kickoff, not usually so much to talk about in the modern day kickoffs. So here was giving you a lot. And like you say, when it was pay-per-view, perhaps there was more reason to give people that intrigue and that need to go and buy the pay-per-view. So yeah, I mean, it was for me, it was a very good build-up. And now we go into the main show, of course, WrestleMania. Of course, it was in Philadelphia, which is a great wrestling crowd as well. We usually very hardcore fan base, and I do like as well, just to mention a couple of the fans we've seen there, the ECW guy, the straw hat guy, was sitting in the third or fourth row on the hard cams. You could see a recognizable face in the crowd, kind of like when you watch wrestling these days and see Brock Lesnar guy everywhere. It's good to have that familiar face. I did like, because we've been discussing a lot about WCW, just going to mention this one before we really go into the pay-per-view. We've been doing our Nitro stuff from '95 recently. There actually is a sign that says Yeti 316, which I found quite comedic.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a very good sign.
Yeah, certainly is indeed. But to kick off the show, like I always do, they always have America the Beautiful, and Boys to Men were given the honour for this WrestleMania. A big group at the time in the 90s, and I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, solid rendition of the national anthem. I think it worked really well with the crowd, as always.
Certainly indeed. And of course, when we got our WrestleMania video package for the year, the showcase of the Immortals and how special and how important WrestleMania means. And of course, with the voiceover and images of the classic, the legend and the late Freddie Blassie. This really, for me, felt important watching this. I used to remember a lot of times I used Freddie Blassie for these sort of things to really give importance to big events in wrestling back in the day. And this touched me a little bit. I was really I thought it was really special and made me feel like we're really hyped up that we're going to see a big, important event here. Yeah,
it was great to see Freddie Blassie. As you said, anything news with Freddie Blassie is magical, so to speak. But I really liked it. I felt it was a great, different way to almost start the sort of show, if that makes sense. I felt Jeanette really fitted the whole WWE Attitude Eras. It was very similar to the videos they'd run before as well, where they were saying sort of various wrestlers saying, isn't real, etc., trying to lace my boots. That's like Stone Cold Steve Austin used to say and stuff. But it was a great start to the show. I felt it really was impactful. It really impacted with me personally as well.
Yeah, it really hits home, doesn't it? But yeah, we go into the show itself then. Of course, we've got from commentary, we've got Michael Cole on commentary, along with Jerry the King Lawler. So almost a bit of like the two commentators you would see today. Of course, Michael Cole, much younger then than what he looks now. I mean, the full-on goatee and the very skinny arms at the time. It's a bit reminiscent looking back at that and seeing Michael Cole in his glories when he first joined WWF back then. Of course, WWE, we call it now. We go on to our first match of the evening, which a bit of a surprise, but of course it's the first time in WrestleMania history. The Hardcore Championship is a triple threat match. We've got Billy Gunn defending against Hardcore Holly and Al Snow. Billy Gunn comes in as the champion. Of course, he did win the belt, didn't he? A couple of weeks on Raw previous to the event, defeating Hardcore Holly. It kind of felt like it was a placeholder to put Billy Gunn into the match because the feud was more Hardcore Holly and Al Snow, wasn't it? I do believe they'd had a famous Hardcore title match which went to the Mississippi River, just a few weeks previous. So, I thought the match was quite a good when we look at it. I remember there was a hip toss from Billy Gunn on Al Snow through a table. Was a big spot. We did see some chairs involved as well in the match. Hardcore Holly was down. We see a chair was brought in, and the famouser was given from Billy Gunn to Al Snow. We thought that this would definitely get a 1-2-3 here, but a chair shot to the back to Billy Gunn, and Hardcore Holly comes in and steals the pin. We got a brand new Hardcore champion. A bit of a shock to start off the night.
Yeah, definitely. So my takings from this match were Hardcore Holly came out. He seemed to get a lot of boos, which was quite interesting to me. It was quite refreshing. Alston didn't really connect with the crowd. Billy Gunn, though, what a fantastic reception. He was clearly over. He was so over the crowd at this point. The match very much was very in ring for me at the start. It was really sort of quiet in parts until they got a hog kick out, and then that seemed to get the crowd going. But it was an okay match. I think it did what it needed to do. I felt it was a bit tame for a hardcore match. If you look at as you said earlier, the match at the Valentine's Day Massacre, where it's in the river, it was very raw, very sort of unorthodox, very unusual, if that makes sense. The fact that it all stayed in sort of side the ring, around the outside of the ring, it felt a bit tame for me, but it was an okay match. It did what it needed to do. My clear taking from this is the fact that it made sense not for Billy Gunn. I think Billy Gunn losing here was a because I think he's clearly destined for fins. The fact he's in this opening move instead of opening match instead of kind of like Road Dogg, it was a bit strange to me, but I was glad to see sort of a new champion, really, and the fact that Billy Gunn will be free to go on something different because he's not a hardcore wrestler.
No, he's not. For me, I just kind of felt maybe that could have been done on a Raw. I felt it's WrestleMania, the biggest show, and I know that obviously we go on to later in the year, Billy Gunn becomes King of the Ring, doesn't he? And I thought myself, maybe he's going to be going on to bigger and better things, and what a good way we've put him in a WrestleMania, the opening match to get the victory, and they could drop the belt at a later date. So for me, it was a big surprise, but like you say, he's not a hardcore wrestler, so perhaps this was the best way to do it. And like you say, he didn't get any discredit here because he didn't take the fall. Al Snow was the guy that took the fall, but certainly an interesting way evening. But we move on next and we have the tag team championship match, strategically placed, you might say, when the battle royal was only about 20 minutes earlier on Sunday Night Heat. So we have Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart with Deborah, of course, taking on Test and D'Lo Brown, and D'Lo Brown, of course, bringing Ivory. She did have a plaster on her face as well, which sold the cigar to the face, which would have happened only an hour earlier. So I thought this was a good touch that they had not just immediately forgotten the storytelling they'd done earlier in the evening. What were your thoughts with this match?
Yeah, it was okay. It did what it needed to do. It was very short. I'm glad that we got Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett retaining the belt here. I'm a massive fan of Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart. I think they're a tag team. They're very unseen. I think they're very underrated, if that makes sense. I feel if you look at the in-ring work, they're so solid. Both of them are solid workers. I think they really work, despite the fact that they don't actually have a tag team name. I think that I was happy to see them retain here. You can clearly see that they're champions for the reason. And I think I really liked the finish. I thought the finish was quite smart.
It was definitely a smart finish. I mean, like you say there, we had some superstars come to the ring here because Ivory pulled Deborah off the ring apron, which was the start of all this mess here, and that distracted the referee. And we saw the PMS came back down then to actually get and confront Ivory. Test was on the floor trying to break it all up, and this led to where obviously it was left the other three superstars in the ring. D'Lo Brown looked like he was going to go for maybe a powerbomb of some sorts, maybe with Jeff Jarrett, and this led to a drop kick from Owen Hart off the top rope, going for Jeff Jarrett to get into the roll want to retain. I agree with you that the right people come out here on top, and we did see, of course, D'Lo Brown and Test fight after the match, which is clear that face and heel dynamic of where that didn't work. My only problem with this match is that I felt that it undervalued the tag team championships, in my personal opinion, because of the fact that the wrong people were in the match. That's my take from it. I do feel that the right people won it, but I do feel as well that the match was very rushed. And I would have liked to have seen it go on a few more minutes, because personally, I mean, one thing that we can take from this, of course, nobody knows at the time, but this is the last ever appearance from Owen Hart at a WrestleMania. And I do think it would have been nice to have seen him have a longer performance and perhaps a more stronger performance. No one, of course, was to know it at the time, but it was his 10th straight WrestleMania as well, and he was bragging about that on commentary earlier in the evening on Heat. For me, as a personal touch, I would have liked to have seen a bigger deal made of Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett in that tag team championship match at WrestleMania. I mean, the match could not have lasted any more, like you say, than a few minutes. I think 4 minutes, and everything was sort of clustered into that quick time. So for me, it's not such a positive, this match, but I like you say, the right result came out. They were a good team back in the day, Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart. They did deliver as a team, like you say, underrated, but I would have liked to have seen more from this in this match.
I understand that. I agree with a lot of the points you make. I think the fact that it was Owen Hart's last match, sadly, or last WrestleMania match, sadly. I get that. I think it's a real shame, as I said earlier in the podcast, they didn't build up credible tag team challenges for Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett. I think you look at the other people, I think really ever since the New Age Outlaws kind of split, that tag team division kind of just went in a bit of a mess. If you look like this, I mean, they dropped the belt to the Corporation, Ken Shamrock and Big Boss Man. Not a credible tag team again. Then you got Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart, which I rated them. I think they were very good. I think Owen Hart was far too good to be a tag team wrestler, but they are a great tag team. They work really well together. Great on the promos. And then you've not got a natural opponent, which is just the way it is, unfortunately. I think the way that they put so much effort into other areas of the show is probably the reason why the tag team division got neglected to a certain point, in my opinion.
Certainly, indeed. I mean, you only have to look to 12 months later. We've got the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudley Boys all in that way. So, I mean, it does get addressed over the next 12 months. But we'll move on next then for the Brawl for All next, which was Butterbean versus Bart the Hammer Gunn. We should talk a bit about the Brawl for All very quickly before we get into the match, because perhaps not so much to talk about with the match itself. But the Brawl for All was kind of like a boxing environment. We had 3 rounds, I believe, back in the day. Were they 60-second rounds or 2-minute rounds? How long were the rounds?
I think it was 60 seconds. I may not be correct, but I'm pretty sure it's 60 seconds.
Yes, I mean, technically with the like of sports entertainment, usually everything is sort of scripted to a stage, and everyone knows what they're doing. Here is just a full-out brawl for real, isn't it? It's a full-on boxing match kind of going on here.
Yeah, it was a free-for-all. It was literally shoot boxing fights. Wrestlers were getting paid if they won the contest, if that makes sense. And if you look at sort of what it did, the amount of wrestlers that got injured, unfortunately, due to this and never recovered, it was a real kind of strange decision in WWE of bringing it back for WrestleMania. I think, for me, the Brawl for All wasn't a good move. I think it made a lot of sort of wrestlers look pretty average, really exposed wrestlers. You're getting people getting knocked out, like JBL got knocked out by Bart Gunn. People like The Godfather, people like sort of Dr. Steph Steve Williams, they spent that money invested in Dr. Steph Steve Williams. And in my opinion, this ultimately killed his WWE run straight away by losing to Bart Gunn the way he did. Yeah,
pretty much. He'd not been in there for very long, had he? And literally that moved him over to where he was in jobber status straight away, because he'd gone down to someone who was not really doing so much at the time. But I mean, Bart Gunn here, Bart the Hammer Gunn was given there as well. And being a hammer in the soccer football world myself, I'm kind of used to seeing the Hammers not win. And this was quite the case here for Bart Gunn. He was knocked out within about 30 to 35 seconds by Butterbean here. Butterbean clearly experienced of doing this sort of thing. It's a level up for Bart Gunn, not facing all these novices, and it really showed. And to be honest, for me, really at WrestleMania, although it's a massive WrestleMania moment, that KO on Bart Gunn will always be remembered. I mean, the way he hit the ground was almost quite chilling to watch, really. But it doesn't really do anything for the WWE talent, does it, to go down so quickly?
No, definitely not. If you look back at it, the way that kind of it was all set up, there wasn't really much of a build to this match either, I felt. Clearly, WWE at that time, it's an interesting insight, WWE at that time were trying to get people such as Chemo and Cabot signed for this type of match. Butterbean was their last choice. And the fact that Butterbean supposedly went to Bart Gunn and offered to work the match, offered to work something so that it wouldn't be a shoot. I think Bart Gunn really should have done that. I think in I think the fact that, but this is ultimately Bart Gunn's end of his career. I think after this match, he doesn't really go on to do too much more. And this did nothing for the people that are knocked out by Bart Gunn, that are lost, and nothing came of it. If that makes sense. It's the fact you had Godfather and Steve Williams, Dr. Death, they all lost to Bart Gunn. It made them look inferior as well. But for me, this was a really stupid move. The only highlight of this whole match, I would say, is the build-up. Is the presence of Gorilla Monsoon, even though it does look foul. It was a fantastic memoir to look back and see Gorilla Monsoon, in my opinion. I was really happy to see it at that point.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
How you
Yes,
felt, Steve?
absolute legend to the wrestling career, like you say, perhaps in the later stages of his life at that point. But yeah, it was it's a special moment to see that. But sadly, the match didn't live up to the hype. The referee was Vinny Pazienza. Had to make sure I read that correctly there. Comes down and has Vinny match, and a little bit of a cheap comedy here, just to end things off. But of course, this hopefully plays into what goes on later in the evening.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. The fact you saw that brutal knockout, and then you got Vinny sparring with the chicken, and yeah, I think it was a great, after what we'd seen Bart Gunn go down so brutally.
Yes, definitely a great way to distract the audience. Definitely, we see Kevin Kelly backstage interviewing Mankind, and Mankind says that he's always tried to play nice, but he plays nice no more. As we go into the fourth match of the evening, of course, the winner of this match would main event the main event of WrestleMania. He would be the referee. Paul Wight against Mankind. And I thought that this was quite an entertaining match, actually. I remember seeing the Mandible Claw involved here and Paul Wight managing to break out of it. I believe he had Mankind on his back and dropped him backwards. We see that some steel chairs were being used, and no DQ was given straight away in this, which was quite interesting. Normally, one chair shot back then would have been enough to get a disqualification. Clearly, some leniency from the referee, but we do see that the Big Show puts two chairs in the middle of the ring and actually chokeslams Mankind through both of them chairs for a disqualification. For me, this has a couple of ways of looking at it. I do feel that it makes Paul Wight look like a moron so early into his WWE career. That's not the smartest booking decision from me in that point of view, but it is a way to get Mankind into that referee spot, into the main event of the storytelling they want to do later. So in another way, it totally works. But does it cheapen that we have a DQ finisher at WrestleMania?
I was a fan of it. You can't have Paul Wight be pinned again, even though Mankind was one of the most over people on the roster. You could hear the amount of response from the crowd. It was a hard move. It was a hard place they put themselves in. Fortunately, they had to do something. I think if Paul Wight would have tapped out or been submitted here, I don't think that does anything for the fear of Paul Wight. Bear in mind, Paul Wight had previously lost to Stone Cold Steve Austin the week before, and it took many sort of much entourage just to try and get Stone Cold to get that win, if that makes sense. This was an interesting match. I think what they did, and I think Mankind helped carry Paul Wight to probably one of his best matches he's had in 2 years, in my opinion. I think he looked far more better in this role than he did as the giant in WCW. I think he's still learning the WWE style, if that makes sense. And I think it was okay. I think it was an interesting way to start the match. Clearly, Mankind is just so over at this point. You can see why there was early discussion that he was going to be potentially in that main event as part of a triple threat, if that makes sense, because he's so over to be in this position in the card.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Mankind was involved in a lot of the championship picture on the road to WrestleMania. I mean, of course, we can talk about this now really rather than later. But I mean, of course, usually you have a clear direction of the Royal Rumble most years now of who and what is going to be the WrestleMania main event. But really nothing's fully really decided, is it? Until just a few weeks before the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. I mean, Steve Austin wasn't the Rumble winner and got his position obviously there at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, winning the cage match with Vince McMahon. But Mankind and The Rock were doing a series of matches from Survivor Series for a good few months. The Empty Arena match, the I Quit match of the Royal Rumble. So Mankind was heavily involved, wasn't he, in the championship picture on the way to WrestleMania?
Yeah, he was painted as a babyface, considering he was such a callous heel in his early WWE days. The fact this babyface transition happened, the fact he won the belt, him and Rock traded the belt quite often. From Survivor Series to Rumble, they traded the belt quite frequently, which made it interesting watching. But it's definitely interesting just to see sort of how it all fits and how it goes towards what they're building. The fact you're not having Mankind in the main event match, still going to be integrally involved. That says already how over he was.
Absolutely, and this wasn't the end either for Paul Wight's evening either. Vince McMahon, of course, understandably furious with the situation, comes out and actually tells Paul Wight off. It leads to a slap as well to the face. And of course, Paul Wight had threatened to chokeslam Vince, but didn't go through with it. After that slap, did he KO him to the ground? A complete knockout punch. It was almost like watching Butterbean and Bart Gunn once again. It was for me, that was an interesting part. And ironically enough, the first big show turn in WWE history. Of course, there went on to be about 1 million of them during his 20-odd year career with WWE. But for me personally, I found that this was entertaining, that part of it there. And of course, see Mankind stretch it off. It leaves massive question marks for the evening as well, because at this point now, you don't know if Mankind is going to be fit enough to be the referee. So in another way where I said as well that it made Paul Wight look stupid, like you say, it is a clever booking move here because it leaves more questions than answers, and it gives you extra intrigue going into the rest of the evening.
Definitely. I like the fact that you're creating questions in a pay-per-view. You're giving people more of a reason to carry on watching it other than the main event. And the fact that the big question is who's going to be the referee, I think that makes even more interesting viewing, really.
It certainly does. I mean, especially when you get to backstage, Vince McMahon is awake and he also says, I want Paul Wight arrested. Like, he needs to be arrested. Like, that's, so it's not clearly, if Mankind's taken away, Paul Wight is not going to be filling the spot. He's out of the corporation. He's no longer in Vince's good books after that shot. So, very interesting stuff indeed. And we'll actually continue with that storyline as it plays through the rest of the evening. But next we have the Intercontinental Championship match, which is a 4-corner elimination match. It's been a long time since I've seen a 4-corner match. So, interesting. Not all the superstars in the ring at the same time. The Intercontinental Champion, the Road Dogg, who'd won the belt a couple of weeks previously on Raw. You mentioned this earlier. It was a surprise that Road Dogg was in this position rather than the hardcore position. I do happen to agree with that. His competitors that he was taking on here in this match were all involved in a feud of their own. Val Venus, Ken Shamrock, and Goldust. Goldust accompanied into the ring by the Blue Meanie and Ken Shamrock's sister, Ryan Shamrock. Now, Ryan Shamrock had been someone I'd forgotten about completely going into this. She had a storyline interactions with Val Venus and Goldust leading into WrestleMania. Of course, she was Ken Shamrock's sister. Could you elaborate a little bit more for people that perhaps don't remember much about Ryan Shamrock?
Yes, so Ryan Shamrock, she randomly appeared in the crowd, and then it was out that she was Ken Shamrock's sister. She then got with Val Venus, and then she then had begun after her, and it was like loads of people basically were after her to date her in the storylines. She was quite integral in parts of it. Clearly at the Valentine's Day Massacre, she slapped Ken Shamrock across the face, and also obviously she was with Venus again, and then she dumped Venus, and then she ended up with Goldust, which is an interesting combo. What is rather interesting as well, which was rumoured, which was kibosh later down the line, was apparently the original storyline plan was that she was actually going to be dating her brother, incest with Ken Shamrock. Vince McMahon and Vince Russo saw sense to kibosh that. I'm sure you feel the same.
Yeah, not a storyline I would have liked to have seen really play out in any era of WWE, let alone even the Attitude Era. I know they did some risky stuff back then, but it certainly would not have been something I would have liked to have seen, no.
I think this ultimately, all what happened with this match is the fact that this match was everybody at the base here dated sort of Ryan Shamrock apart from Ken, so they'd all been involved. So it was quite well built, I felt, for a 4-way.
I mean, to be fair, it's an interesting way to interact 4 superstars very quickly, especially with such different gimmicks. It kind of feels like if you had not known much going into this is 4 random superstars being thrown together here into one match. But this match, again, I think went on for about 6 or 7 minutes here. The first way of the eliminations was actually 2 superstars in one go. Double count out, Ken Shamrock and Val Venus went far up the entranceway. Ken Shamrock ran back to the ring, but didn't get back in time, did he, to beat the 10 count. This led him to then doing some belly-to-belly suplexes on the other 2 superstars. He was making sure he got his revenge on everybody before leaving the ringside area. It was a very unique finish with Road Dogg and Goldust. It was one of those classic Goldust running towards the ropes. Ryan Shamrock clearly thinking it's the Road Dogg and goes to pull the leg. It leads to a distraction. Road Dogg goes to run in. Goldust wants to counter it to a power slam, but it's then changed into a pinning counter, and Road Dogg gets the 1-2-3 to retain the Intercontinental Championship. So we keep the IC champion on the Road Dogg, which for me was a surprise, but ultimately I thought was a clever booking move, looking at how the match played out.
Yeah, it was fairly good. I've got a few bits about this. My takings from this match were what a fantastic worker Ken Shamrock and Val Venus both were. I think they both were excellent in this match. I felt like both were credible. They both felt big time to me. A couple of things. I thought the finish was okay. It is a bit weird though. If you look what happens the next night on Raw, you get the opposite. You get Goldust pinning Road Dogg for the Intercontinental. So I was surprised really that they swapped it around. I don't know why they didn't just do this at Mania, in my opinion. I think that was a missed opportunity to get the big crowd reaction. But no, it was an interesting match. I was glad that you didn't get Ken Shamrock here get pinned. I think he's far too credible to be in this kind of role. But I enjoyed it. I think the time they had, they did well with the time they had, basically. So it told a good story. Further created the need to carry on watching, if that makes sense, which was good.
Certainly indeed. Another thing we should mention on the outside as well was Ryan Shamrock and the Blue Meanie not really getting on either amongst with Goldust. So it had a volatile situation the whole way through, didn't it?
Yeah, it was almost like Blue Meanie was trying to get sort of Goldust to choose him over Ryan, which I thought was an interesting dynamic. And the Goldust character at that point had been a bit odd, so to speak. It'd gone back from being the natural Dustin Rhodes back to Goldust, which it had also done his premise with Luna Vachon earlier on as well. I think it was interesting just to see the whole dynamic.
Certainly indeed. And just to finish things off there, Goldust, of course, taking it out on Ryan Shamrock, dumping her at WrestleMania. So your WrestleMania moment there with Ryan Shamrock, of course, was the famous dumping. But we go backstage and Big Show is leaving. The whole police force making sure he gets into the car to leave the arena. So, yeah, Big Show no longer going to play a factor. Paul Wight no more involved at WrestleMania. Very interesting point I want to make at this point of the show. Now, I just took note because I did feel a lot of the matches were quite quick. Now, at this point of the show, we've gone through all of that and we're only 1 hour and 5 minutes into the pay-per-view. Now, compared to a WrestleMania, what you get now, or even a WWE pay-per-view now, normally you've got 2 matches finished at best and you possibly start in your 3rd match. The question I have here is, are the pay-per-view matches today too long or are these pay-per-view matches too short?
Oh, very good question. And I think that there's a couple of ways to answer that. I will answer the way I think it's best, which is I think the thing is nowadays you've got 7 hours for a WrestleMania, whereas this is all done in 3. You could say 4 with the Sunday Night Heat, which is the difference. And I think the thing is you're only putting the most important people on this WrestleMania card, whereas WrestleMania nowadays is just everybody and anybody, which is maybe the reason. But I feel as the matches go on up the card, they need to have more time. If the wrestlers are capable in the ring like they are today, far more capable than the ones back in '99 to have good matches, in my opinion. Now, it's just they don't have the storylines behind them to be able to make people so invested, really, for that amount of time, for 7 hours that they're being asked to kind of have match after match, if that makes.
Yeah, it certainly does indeed. I think you raised some good points there. I feel as well, looking at it, back then it felt like that always the idea was less is more. I think they always wanted to leave you wanting more. And I found myself like at this stage of the pay-per-view going, well, I wanted to see more from some of these matches. Now, not taking it away from them, that what I saw I was quite happy with to a degree, but I feel that it would have been nice if this had been spaced out to maybe an hour and a half in the pay-per-view rather than just an hour. I do feel sometimes that the pay-per-views we get now in current WWE, they're too long, but I also found this, I would like to see something in the happy medium area personally. Something that makes me feel like I want to see more, but also something that makes me feel it's not so rushed. But here, like you say, it can be the work rate. It can be the fact they want to get the focus all on the main event. And like you say, it's just the differences of how WWE does their business these days, because obviously the whole WrestleMania here is a 2 hour and 40-minute show here, and we've got still a number of matches still to go in the card. But like you said,
there is one other thing as well that was out of their hands. The fact that Bart Gunn got knocked out, they probably lost like 10 minutes there, maybe. That's something 10 minutes they've got to sort of counter for, which must have had a plan. They must have made that 10 minutes up, which maybe that's the reason why the show is only 2 hours 45 and not 3. Actually, just thought about that actually.
Yeah, well, it's a great point you make there, because obviously it's supposed to go the full rounds, maybe a judge's decision. I mean, that obviously means that if something's finished 30 seconds into when it started, a bit of a surprise, and perhaps it does cut a bit of time, like you say. But we're going to go to the next match anyway, and Triple H versus Kane, an interesting match put together for WrestleMania. Now, I do believe that this is not the first time they've interacted, that the storyline has been going on for a little while going into Mania. Yeah,
definitely. It'd been going on for sort of many months, and the various things have gone on. They'd exchanged sort of fire blows at each other, fire shots, the whole China dynamic as well. It was great to see this. I felt this really felt like a WrestleMania worthy match, if that makes sense. It's interesting to see Kane sort of almost humanised in that makes sense in the build to this. I think the fact that you've got Hunter sort of on his almost own, he's with DX at that point, he's kind of on his own doing stuff. Or he's kind of with DX. Is he with DX at that point? He's on and off, isn't he? Kind of with DX. But this was an interesting match. The fact you've got these people sort of there, you've got China sort of as a heel. Then she cost Triple H numerous times and went with the corporation. And in fact, you've had Kane be kicked out of the corporation. This was a match, but I really like the build up to this match. The fact that you've got Triple H dressing up as Goldust and then releasing a fireball in Kane's face, Kane launching a fireball into China's face as well, and then obviously feeling guilty after that. It was a great build. If that so this is what a WrestleMania would be. You need WrestleMania matches to have build, if that makes sense. I think.
Certainly, indeed. Like you said, the humanising of Kane, it's almost the point where he come down a level a little bit from being this really sort of big red monster that we'd been used to seeing beforehand. Yeah, I mean, the match itself for me was interesting itself. Like you say, I did actually check out the build up there with Triple H dressed as Goldust, which was a shocking moment on Raw at that time. And I remember actually watching that back at the time and being a very shocking moment. So yeah, I mean, like you say, there is some build here for itself. But just before we go into the match, we do see that chicken again come to try and attack Kane on the way down to ringside. Now, of course, when you try to attack Kane, you probably are not going to succeed at the best of times, especially when you're dressed as a chicken. The world famous chicken has his head taken off, and of course, it's really revealed that it's none other than Pete Rose for the second WrestleMania in a row. Now, what I liked about this is that Pete Rose actually, with his sports career, had actually been involved with Philadelphia. So this was a great excuse to bring him back to get the crowd pop here, to get the second tombstone for the second year running. And I do think another great line was made from Michael Cole on commentary. Of course, we're now a lot further down the line. How long is this going to go for? Till WrestleMania 30? I just found that was a great line because, of course, now we're at WrestleMania 36. So I just the idea that, yeah, no, it didn't carry on. But the idea that they could actually think that far ahead and as if it was so far ahead at that time and we've actually gone that 20 years further now is just incredible to really think of when you look back at it. But what were your thoughts of Pete Rose? Did you have the same enjoyment from it as I did?
I really enjoyed it. There's a couple of positives. I think the fact that you got that continuity, that's a great thing. I really like the fact that Pete Rose was willing to take the risk. He took a tombstone. How many people, that celebs that come into WWE and WF at that point, willing to put their body on the line to take an actual finishing move? I felt that was really sort of credible. I don't know what you felt. Maybe that's kind of me overlooking that. What did you make of that tombstone he took?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously, you have to be trained in some elements. You can't just turn up and take that. So, I mean, clearly there has been some time and effort put in from Pete Rose to be able to take a tombstone. So, yeah, I mean, it certainly is a special feeling that some guys come in and they can get involved in that way. Definitely. I was a fan of this segment all the way through, and just had a little bit of light humour before we got such a serious match coming ahead with him and Triple. A good happy tempo, but yeah, the match with Triple H and Kane I thought was an interesting one on this WrestleMania card. How did you see it play out?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I felt it was a match that told a lot of stories. I think the fact that you've got sort of once again you're going to disqualification finish, which makes sense. You can't be beating Triple H here, and Kane's meant to be sort of pretty unstoppable, so it makes sense not to get a pin. I really enjoyed it. I particularly liked the ending. I thought the ending was really, really good. It culminated many months of booking, so I was really happy with the ending.
Yes, well, of course. I mean, China comes down and she looks like she's going to attempt to assist Kane, doesn't she? She gets a steel chair and directs Kane to go back towards Triple H, that she's going to attack him with the chair. As Kane turns his back, she hits him on the back with the steel chair, which leads to that disqualification, if I'm not mistaken. And we see Triple H and China reunite, to where we get a massive pop from the crowd. It felt like this was actually more important to everybody than the result of the match. I must admit, I'm disappointed from a standpoint, because as it's WrestleMania, I do believe that that's the show where there should be not as many false finishes. It's just a personal pet hate of mine. I don't really like to see so many counts outs and disqualifications, but I do understand the idea of protective booking, and I do think at this point it was kind of important to a moment. And yeah, I mean, I like the way that it played out with China coming back to reunite with Triple H, and obviously DX is the full pack once again at this stage.
I really liked it. It was feel good for me. It's feel good of DX reuniting. You've got Triple H and China doing a babyface turn temporarily, obviously. But no, I really enjoyed it for what it lasted. I felt this match was okay. I think it created there was room there for a rematch necessary down the line if they need it. It was great to see China, Triple H, and Kane have that interaction again, which further carries on the storyline they're building at the moment.
Certainly does. I mean, it's probably that China and Triple H reunited is probably almost like the closest thing we got to like WrestleMania 7 with Randy Savage and Elizabeth. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. Spot on. Yeah.
Definitely with the crowd reaction. Well, we're going to go backstage, and Kevin Kelly says that Mankind has been taken to hospital. Vince McMahon has actually says that, well, obviously Mankind is there, not going to be able to referee later. Paul Wight's been taken away. We need to solve that dilemma of who will be the referee. I'm going to be the special referee. And a great line says that he's got a great cut-out referee's top just in his bag for needs. So Vince McMahon announces himself as that special guest referee. A twist in how the plot was going to play out, and certainly gave you that feeling at this point that Steve Austin would not be walking away as champion by the end of the evening.
I love it. You're further getting the crowd up and getting them heated and angry. The fact that Stone Cold's not got a chance, you're turning the odds against Stone Cold again, which is great. And I really think it painted Vince as the ultimate heel, which he was, if that makes sense. It was a clever move, and this is further creating interest for that main event. Not that it needed it.
Yes, agreed. Not necessarily that it needed it, but certainly does add another level to everything going on. We'll move on into the Women's Championship, which it's not a positive point for me on the evening, unfortunately. Sable versus Tori. I'm not really a fan of a lot of the whole thing going on here, but I do want to get just a bit of insight here. And now, Tori was almost like a fan, wasn't she, of Sable? And this turned into like an accused stalker angle of some description?
Yeah, what they did is obviously they just kind of dumped Tori in the ringside. She started appearing at shows. She then sort of sent Sable flowers and stuff like that. Obviously, Sable at that point had just gone full heel. She turned on Tori and went full heel. The original plan with this match, though, was meant to be Luna Vachon versus Sable. That was meant to be where they were going, if that makes sense. The thing is, Luna Vachon in the build-up got fired. There was some sort of backstage shenanigans where she was refusing to do stuff, or she had some sort of temper tantrums, supposedly. But as I said, this would actually be a really good match, because I always thought Tori, particularly when she was Terry Powers, was a fantastic worker for a woman. I thought she was really, really good. I think the thing with Sable, she's so limited in the ring to a certain point. I think the fact that she's there, obviously, because she's in Playboy, the fact she connects with the crowd, and now you've turned her heel, I felt they almost killed it, if that makes sense. She was almost like she was doing the whole Sunny route. She's too good for the crowd. She's this, she's that. And I really felt she was uncomfortable. Every time she was in the ring, it looked like she didn't want to be there, which I think really kind of hindered this match to a certain point. But I really didn't like it. When we go over the finish, I can discuss another reason why it was really, really wrong, if that makes sense.
Certainly, indeed. I just want to get just one more touch there. You said about the heel turn, then her feeling uncomfortable. I really felt every time she did the guys came to see me line that she had, and she does the sort of shake, and it just really looks uncomfortable. It doesn't look natural at all, and just really doesn't seem to fit the character of what Sable represents at all. Like you say, I feel it kills her as a character. Yeah,
it does. I think the fact is she wants to be. She obviously wants to be there just to collect the royalty checks, and that's it. Really, I think in-ring was a big mistake. I think the fact they made her go in-ring because of her looks, I think, was a big mistake. WWE, obviously, at that point, I think they could have done better. I think there would have been better people to be champion. I know it was a draw. I appreciate she was over at that point, but you have people, as you said, such as Jacqueline. You've got Tori, she can wrestle. Ivory can wrestle. So you have got women that can wrestle there that would have been far better from an in-ring perspective. But I guess the money is ultimately with Sable there, which is the reason why they've done what they've done.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we'll go into the match description itself then. Of course, Tori goes for a crossbody, misses Sable, and takes out the referee. And we get I believe a debuting. Would I be right in saying this? Nicole Bass.
Yeah, it's a debut.
And she attacks Tori. There's a gorilla press slam on Tori. And of course, I mean, Nicole Bass, I mean, we know China was a very masculine woman. Nicole Bass also very much the similar kind of way, but taller, I believe, than China was. We see a Sable bomb from Sable onto Tori, and the referee comes back round, and we get a free count. And the right result for me, Sable retaining. I mean, I know we turn around and say that that she's not best for in-ring work, but I do feel at that time that Tori was a very much still a bit unknown to me. I don't know. Even though she was quite a good worker, I like you, I would prefer seeing someone like Ivory or Jacqueline at that position taking the championship at that time. So I feel that there was other people that could have been in that role. But Nicole Bass coming in, for me, was definitely a surprise, to say the least.
Yeah, it was definitely surprised. The problem I've got with this ultimately with Nicole Bass coming in, I don't know if you noticed this, Steve. It's pretty obvious in the live. I watched the WWE live version of the pay-per-view. I've got rather than the network version. Nicole Bass comes out about 30 seconds too early. She's just there way too early, which I don't know what happened with the cue cards there that day. For me, it looked like a glaring error, really. I think it really made her look like an idiot. She's there, obviously, out, and she's there just too early. I get that she's impactful. The fact she's with Sable, getting Sable the cheap win. Sable had to win, I agree with you. She was over, so I agree with that. But I felt sorry for Nicole Bass a bit. I felt that this was a way to sort of, you're debuting a new talent here at WrestleMania, which is quite a big place to debut wrestlers, yet you're putting her out the 30 seconds too early, which doesn't help her or the angle itself.
Around the ring corner, wasn't she? Like you say, for at least 30 seconds before she come in. It's almost like she was picking her spot, but that point the shock value had already gone because we'd seen she was there, and it's unlikely that she was going to help the babyface at that point, it felt. But
no, of course.
So I agree with your point there completely. But sadly for me, so far this was the worst match on the card for me at this point.
Yeah, it was. To be fair, watching 99, it was probably the worst match of 99 I'd seen at that point. I was really disappointed. For a Mania match, this should have gone on Sunday Night Heat. If it wasn't for Sable being over and the debut of Nicole Bass, this probably would have been on Sunday Night Heat for me.
Yeah, probably most likely. We have the European Championship next now, and I must admit, so much fun. Really enjoyed this. Shane McMahon, the European champion, taking on X-Pac. Do you want to give us a bit of the backstory of this? I do remember the Greenwich Street fight that was taking place on the Raw leading up to this.
Yeah, definitely. So Shane McMahon, obviously, previously, he was on the commentary for Sunday Night Heat. He then obviously became a key component in this corporation Sable. He managed to get the European Championship from X-Pac down the line. Obviously, it led to sort of this whole rematch, if that makes sense. Got the debut of the Mean Street Posse in the build-up, which was quite fun to see. I quite enjoyed that. I thought it was quite funny. And I think the fact that they're really creating Shane McMahon as sort of somebody you want to beat up, you really feel sorry for X-Pac here. But this match for me, it was a fantastic match. Even when they give the match away the week before on Raw as a Greenwich Street fight to a certain point, it really created interest. You really want to see X-Pac get his hands finally get revenge. I really enjoyed this. I thought this match, for me, before you talk about it and go into it, I really was surprised how good it was. It just shows to me how much of a good worker Shane was with little or no experience and how credible X-Pac was. X-Pac, for me, I know years before that, in the early 90s, he'd been credible in the independent scene. Even when he was 1-2-3 kid, he's always been known as a good worker. But the fact that he's on the main stage now, he's as X-Pac, he's obviously there with Shane McMahon, and this match was great. I really enjoyed it. It was a high after the low we had with the previous match, if that makes sense.
Certainly, indeed. I do remember seeing an interview, actually, a more recent interview of X-Pac, and he said that he was actually disappointed when first learning that his WrestleMania opponent at WrestleMania 15 was going to be Shane McMahon. But how wrong he was, because how entertaining this match actually proved to be. I mean, the shenanigans start from even the entrance. I mean, Gerald Briscoe and Pat Patterson attacking X-Pac on the entranceway. Not to any success, by the way. X-Pac gets through them. Test is at ringside with Shane McMahon. We've got the Mean Street Posse, like you say, all getting involved. Shane McMahon trying to be the pure coward heel, running away at every given opportunity. I just thought it was absolutely genius. And X-Pac always found a way to overcome the odds. It felt like that regardless of how many people were down there, he was actually going to get the 1, 2, 3. But it got to a point where Shane was sort of starting to get on top of all of this. Triple H and China come down. Of course, they had a backstage interview where they'd said just before the match, which we have not mentioned, how that they're all united again and DX is stronger than ever. It felt that Triple H and China were going to come down and help here. But as we see the face buster from X-Pac to Shane McMahon, China gets on the ring apron, which was a bit of a surprise. And we see Triple H come in, and then we see the pedigree given to X-Pac. The full-on heel turn here. Triple H turns on DX, turns on X-Pac, and Shane McMahon happens to retain the European Championship. For me, at this point, this was the match that I found the most fun of the whole evening.
Yeah, it was a fantastic match. What a swerve, though. That's got Vince Russo at his greatest there. What a fantastic swerve. The fact that you've got this underlying storyline the whole night through WrestleMania, and yet you're paying it off with this. The fact you had the fans 1 minute thinking they're getting DX back to this, and it made sense. You're having Hunter join the corporation now and turning up on X-Pac. It does set up some feuds for him down the line, and I think the obvious feud going forward from this would have been X-Pac versus Hunter. But I was really happy to see is the fact you've then got sort of Hunter as a heel now, and we can see what he goes on to with China. It makes sense. It was a great for me, and I really think it really credited that Shane once again retained the belt, which is obviously making people want to see Shane lose again, which was clever.
Yeah, very clever. The whole way everything was done there was very clever, and I mean it went on to continue as well with a beatdown after the match also, and we see that the New Age Outlaws come down, but of course Test and Triple H get the best here, and we hear the commentary like, oh, Triple H, he's joined the corporation, really emphasised that point back home, so there was no question marks on it. Triple H was on that side, and in the end, of course, we do see that I believe Kane comes down to make the save, doesn't he? There, so that leads to the heels to run off here. But like you say, to where Triple H went on to after this, it clearly seemed like that they obviously felt that DX for him was run its course, and he couldn't be a top guy as part of DX. They wanted to get him as a heel on his own with China. I mean, I thought that this was very cleverly done. Like you say, Swerve done it his best. And for me, at this point, at that moment, was the best match on the whole pay-per-view.
I thought it was fantastic at that point. I think actually, I agree with you. It was probably the best match of the pay-per-view at that point. And you're also very clever. You're once again getting heel turns and face turns. You're getting Kane now. Kane coming out makes him a baby face. Clever. You can go on to do different stuff. I really would love to see this type of thing in modern day. I really hope that they would do something like this, where you've got a storyline the whole night through. You pan it off. You don't need to do a double swerve and double turns all night. But I think at this point, for me, I was really happy with that. I think the fact that you go off the pay-per-view hating Triple H, and you just want to see him get his comeuppance, and the fact that really creates an interesting dynamic with The Rock and Triple H to who's actually going to be the one in the corporation down the line potentially, which is good as well.
Yeah, lots of questions, and that's what you get there, to give that intrigue to wanting to carry on watching, seeing the next show, everything at a fast pace. And we've got a video package next then for The Undertaker and the Big Boss Man, led into kind of this Ministry of Darkness versus corporation rivalry that's been going on. Of course, The Undertaker and Vince McMahon had been building for a number of weeks. Could you give us a bit of insight on that, please, George?
Yes. So obviously, The Undertaker lost at Undertaker lost at Rock Bottom against Stone Cold Steve Austin in the Buried Alive match. He kind of disappeared. You then got kind of acolytes sort of kidnapped Midian randomly. Undertaker then came back in January, and he came back with a whole new attire, full on heel turn and start. He started basically being a bit of a menace to people, and it was interesting. Obviously, they got the Brood with them and stuff like that, and then Undertaker then personally started threatening Vince McMahon on a kind of weekly basis, to the fact that there was an Inferno match between Undertaker and Kane, and a teddy was given to Vince McMahon that was on fire, which was quite iconic. It was a really interesting sort of whole build-up, the fact that you got sort of Vince McMahon and Undertaker. These are two heels. Vince McMahon, the biggest heel in the company at that point, besides The Rock. You got Undertaker now on a heel turn, which is interesting. And then obviously somewhere along the line, Vince McMahon, basically Big Boss Man, as his corporate head shooter, so to speak, challenged Undertaker for a Hell in a Cell match. For me, I was pretty disappointed by the Undertaker Boss Man initially. Even before seeing the match, I felt that you're getting two heels here against each other. And for me, I think the far better choice would have been Ken Shamrock in this fit. If you could do a Hell in a Cell, I would love to see Ken Shamrock, the Undertaker. I think that would have been far more entertaining. But let's cover the match, unless you've got anything to add.
Yeah, to be honest, before we do, I think that you make a fantastic... But I would have actually loved to much more to have seen Ken Shamrock in that role. Nothing against the Big Boss Man, but he
just got destroyed. I'm not really, the Big Boss Man got destroyed time and time again in the build-up, which I think kind of meant that you really knew he had no realistic chance of winning this, which it was a strange choice. And for the Undertaker and Boss Man, even you put in the Hell in a Cell as a sort of distraction to the actual match, it was a strange choice of match for me, I felt, for WrestleMania for an Undertaker.
Certainly, I would agree with everything. And I must admit, I don't think your feelings are left alone, because for me, I felt that this was the quietest the crowd were the whole evening. I felt during this match they just seemed disinterested throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, fair point. I agree with you. I think the fact that you're sort of, this was in the semi-final position of the show as well. It was too far up the card. I think this probably should have been sort of lower down, if it makes sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, arguably I would have said so. I think that there was a spot that really didn't help in this match, because I do notice there was a few boos. There was a point where the Undertaker was actually handcuffed to the outside of the cell. Yeah. The nightstick shot to the head, and Undertaker fell, and the handcuffs broke naturally. And I think that led to a few boos, because obviously your suspense of disbelief of what these props are supposed to do. Clearly, this is something that was $1.99 from Toys R Us that clearly broke quite easily. I just think I don't know, fans just seem to buy it. I wondered if one of the problems, because there was blood, there was nothing really wrong with the action itself.
No.
It was slightly maybe a bit on the boring side, but I wonder, I mean, because back then you didn't really have like the Tron screens as much as you do now, especially in these stadiums at WrestleMania. Was the match too much on one part of the outside of the ring? Because it felt like the inside of the ring with this match only went on for a couple of minutes, but it felt like a good 9-10 minutes was outside of the ring.
Yeah, fair point. I think the fact is you've got sort of what they were trying to do, and it's really hard. I think the fact that you've got these other Hell in a Cell matches we'd seen before, such as Mankind Undertaker, such as Undertaker Shawn Michaels, it never stood a chance, to be fair, to compete with that. So they would have had to do an awful lot to try and come close. It was okay. I wasn't particularly fond of the ending when we discussed that. But for me, it was just a really poor match. I have to say, it's probably one of the worst matches of the night, alongside the women's match earlier in the show.
Certainly. We'll go on to that ending now then, shall we? I mean, personally for me, I'm going to give an opinion here because I felt I heard a few boos on the network version. I don't know if that's the same with the live version. And I feel a little bit that this match was rushed to the finish.
Yeah, I think that. The trouble you got is a couple of things went wrong here. So you've obviously got that finish where the big boss unfortunately gets hand. For me personally, I felt it was a step too far. I didn't enjoy seeing someone getting hand. I think the fans in the audience, as you said, don't know whether they should be cheering or booing somebody getting hung, which is understandable. You're putting the fans in a really awkward position. For me, I wasn't a fan of that. I think it was a bit too much. I'm surprised really that they sort of let that stand on the network. I thought that'd be edited out, if I'm being honest. And a bit of comedic value though for you. So obviously they did the whole hand in with the boss man. Obviously Christian and Gangrel the Brood came down to the Hell in a Cell. On the way back up, Edge got caught. I don't know if you noticed that, so that he literally couldn't get back up to kind of there. It's just wrestle crap. It's just what I just don't get really what went through WWE's sort of head to do this at such a pivotal point of WrestleMania, really. And what it doesn't do anything for anybody this match at all. Undertaker doesn't need to win. Big Boss Man is not really a challenger. It's just it's a really weird way to pay off the sort of kind of Undertaker Vince McMahon feud as such. It just didn't make sense to me.
It certainly didn't. No, I mean the thing is, like you say, with the hanging segment. I mean, I will say as well. I found it very uncomfortable to watch. Even maybe back then I probably would have been, like you said, just like maybe not such a fan of it. But I mean, maybe now I just look and think, just through society in general. For me, I just think that it's majorly a step too far. And the thing is as well. I can't see how he's protected and there must obviously a way he's not actually being hung. He would have gone there and then. But obviously, there's a way to have obviously done it. But he's not got his hands trying to get loose. He's actually his arms are by his side. And obviously, Paul Bear actually lifts the cell, which creates the hanging situation. For me, the whole thing I'm not a fan of it. I'm very uncomfortable. For me, I actually put this as my least favorite part of the whole pay-per-view, just purely because of the fact that the Hell in a Cell match for me was one of the most disappointing in history. Personally, I think, like you say, when you had two previous Hell in a Cell matches, people expect to see someone thrown off the Hell in a Cell going forward after that. And probably you could argue, although it was probably one of the best Hell in a Cell matches Undertaker Mankind of all time, it possibly killed the gimmick quite early on as well, because how would you top it? There's no way to top that. I mean, of course, in future Hell in a Cell matches, WWE found a way to do that. I mean, Mick Foley as his Cactus Jack gimmick went through the Hell in a Cell. Another time, Rikishi went flying off the top. Shane McMahon's decided to take a couple of journeys off the top of there previously. So, I mean, there have been ways to make it interesting, but it does feel these days, if there isn't one major insane spot like that, I think a lot of fans tend to come off a bit disappointed. But
definitely. I've got kind of one last thing on that. Another interesting point. So building this whole sort of Undertaker Vince McMahon thing, the actual original payoff for that angle, which I think you'd be interested to know, I only found this out the other day, was apparently they were reporting for Undertaker to be in line with Linda McMahon, and that was going to be the big reveal, which if they would have done that, that would have been totally weird, wouldn't it? Think about that.
It's an interesting twist. That compared to the other suggestion you've had, I don't know if I've been okay with that and seeing where that would lead to. It's interesting.
You've had Undertaker and Linda against Shane and Vince, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, wrestling is a soap opera, and that has got soap opera written all over it. So you talk about the twists and the swerves that would have been a massive swerve at the time. So I possibly might have been okay seeing that. I certainly was fine with how the direction went in the end in '99 anyway, with the continuation of that storyline. But it certainly was interesting stuff indeed. We did actually, I'm going to just quickly go because I did ask for some comments on Twitter, and I wanted your take on this? Because obviously you continue watching through 99. And the first comment that I'm going to look through here to read out now comes from Dominic Mosley, who wrote here, and was asked what are your memories and impressions of WrestleMania 15. And he wrote the fact that The Undertaker and the Brood murdered the Big Boss Man by putting a noose around his neck, hanging him from Hell in a Cell, only for the Big Boss Man to return on Raw the next night unhurt. Now, I haven't watched the following night on Raw at this stage, but I'm sure you have. What are your thoughts looking back? There's no effects whatsoever to the Big Boss Man.
Fair point. I guess that's fair point, Dominic. I agree with all your comments. I think the thing is WWE had to kind of show that Bossman wasn't dead. I think they weren't painting him being hung as actually dying. But it is quite funny how they're not selling anything, which is kind of probably a big mistake, if that makes sense. I agree with Dominic. I think he's spot on.
Yep, I do as well. We're going to go for then scenes from the rave party. Of course, back then you didn't have WrestleMania Access and all that. You had a rave party going on, and a few scenes from that on the network.
Rage party.
Was it a rage party?
Rage.
Sorry.
No,
You can see that I was writing my notes when at the same time as that was going on. I didn't really pay too much attention, I've been brutally honest. But it did have some fun moments from what I did pay attention to in it. I mean, a lot of the big stars were involved at this rage party. What were your thoughts of it?
I haven't actually watched it, to be fair. That's probably one I should have watched, but I do know that Big Pun was there and a couple of other people were there. But it's interesting to see that they're throwing that away on a Saturday night on USA Network in the build, obviously, to WrestleMania. But it's interesting, different way to approach it. Certainly compared to Access and stuff like that, I think Access would have been probably far more fun to attend if people.
Certainly, I think the way we have it today, I think, is a lot more exciting. Would intrigue me a lot more to go to WrestleMania to see all the memorabilia and stuff, rather than actually being in some sort of rage, not rave party. Although,
rave party sounds fun, though, doesn't it?
It does sound fun. I mean, you imagine, Kane with some glow sticks. That would definitely would have been fun back in the days. But we'll move back on then to as we're about to get to the main event and Michael Cole. Now, before we go into Michael Cole here, there's something that you said that is in the live version that is not made reference to in the network version, and no surprises here. I just want you to give Michael Cole his glory here and reveal what he did earlier in the evening.
So Michael Cole basically came out and he said something like, tune in later to QVC and hear the new champion. Problem was the title change hadn't happened then. So Michael Cole was obviously given the finish by the main event before, which I think it's quite funny. Really. I was surprised that he got a lot of hate that night. That's for sure.
I'm sure Vince would have had one or two words to him up.
Now, God, imagine if he did this today. God.
Yeah, of course. But they do make. But there are some boxes on commentary.
Well, it's hard to make mistakes. It's easy to make mistakes. I get that totally.
It totally is, and I mean, of course, it can be some sort of direction as well fed to his ears. It's not necessarily him that would have made the comment there, but it certainly is a mistake from somewhere, and definitely deserves the laugh and the mention that it got there. But Michael Cole did actually say that his role for the evening was finished, and Jim Ross was going to be actually calling the main event of WrestleMania, which I think was a nice touch. Of course, Jim Ross had gone through a difficult time, hadn't he? Yeah,
he had. It's great to see JR back here, and JR actually in sort of hosting the main event of WrestleMania. Considering JR for weeks had kind of had brief cameos, it just made the main event that more special. It has to be Jim Ross that calls it. Jim Ross is iconic with the Attitude Era. So for me, I marked out when Jim Ross came out. I was so happy.
Me too. And of course, with a Steve Austin match as well, you know that you're going to get some magic amongst here. But we have quite a lot to touch on before we even get to the match. Vince McMahon, of course, comes out as the special referee, only for Commissioner Shawn Michaels to come and make an appearance. And HBK says for all them years he's worked with the company, he actually had to buy a ticket to be at WrestleMania, which I thought was a nice little touch there. But Vince needs to read the rule book. Now, I'm guessing that HBK was hoping to say contract at this point rather than the rule book, but he kept mentioning the rule book, was that when it comes to appointing the referee, Vince McMahon can't do that. Only Shawn Michaels can do that. So he was going to actually give Mike Chioda the role as special referee, and he told that Vince McMahon that he could hit the bricks and made sure he was away from ringside. He also made sure that the corporation was banned from ringside during this main event, even though it was a no disqualification match. So all the rules have been made equal and fair going into this main event, and everything have been put and made right into the world. How were your thoughts when you were watching all this play out?
What a great way to get sort of Shawn Michaels to make a cameo. I really loved it. I thought it was really clever. The fact that the crowd connected, didn't see Shawn Michaels, and you're really painting the chance that Stone Cold Steve Austin's got a chance to win the title here again, which is great. Really, I really enjoyed it. I felt it was a great way to get out of Vince being referee, which was interesting.
Certainly, indeed. Well, we've given away the results of the main event as well for WrestleMania, but I'm sure most people would have already seen this show and know the result themselves. But of course, it's the Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin WWE Championship no DQ match. Now, I loved the opening to this match particularly because it went everywhere. It went through the crowd, one side of the ring, the other side of the ring, up the entranceway. We did see actually that there was a backdrop where Steve Austin's leg actually hit the part of the entranceway where the lighting was, and that looked nasty, but it added some effect and drama into the match. I really enjoyed that. There was, tables involved. I remember Steve Austin using his elbow to come off the guardrail to put the Rock through a table. It took 2 attempts, but he made sure Rock went through that table. We had rock bottoms, we had stunners, we had chairs involved. It was a fantastic opening sequences to this match. But we get to the nitty gritty, George, if you don't mind, before we come to you. Austin actually hits the ref with a steel chair, but he wasn't actually swinging for the ref. He was swinging for the Rock, and the Rock actually pulled the ref in the way, which led to that moment. We see that Tim Wight comes down to make the aid, and he then becomes the official for that point of the match. But we get where Tim Wight is, I believe, rock bottomed by the Rock to make sure that he is no longer the ref at this point. Earl Hebner comes out to make the count after a Stone Cold Stunner, but Vince comes to ringside and actually hits Earl Hebner. So the match is still going on. We've gone through 3 referees, and we've now got our 4th referee, which is Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, of course, then joins in on the attack with the Rock. We see that a lot of attack going on in the corner, the stomping a mud hole, which was quite a famous phrase used back then. Only for Mankind to actually come back from the hospital in a big shock moment. The crowd pops massively for this at this point. Clearly good storytelling with the referees, but I will ask some questions about the referees shortly. All dressed in his referee gear as well, Mankind, to take and make sure that Vince McMahon is out of the ring. The attack is there. The Rock misses the people's elbow as we get towards the finish, and Austin also counters the Rock bottom and turns that into a Stone Cold Stunner, and we get the 1, 2, 3, very eventful main event, and we get a brand new WWF champion at that point. Of course, we're going to say WWE champion for this particular podcast. But yeah, I mean, absolutely amazing. Vince left distraught as well. Clearly not getting what he wants here. We've got Austin as champion once again. The whole match from start to finish. Let's dissect it in parts now. Now I've told the whole match. George, I want to know first your thoughts on the amount of referees of this match. Was it overkill, or do you think it was integral for the storytelling?
I think it was integral. You're making people think that Austin's not going to, which is crucial. The amount of people that have been hankering for Stone Cold to get that belt back for many months, considering he lost it many months before, by sort of in that Judgment Day pay-per-view with Undertaker Kane, and then you think he's going to get the payoff for Deadly Game, doesn't get that. It was great to see sort of the whole culmination of the storyline. Bear in mind, you went from Royal Rumble season thinking that Austin hasn't got a chance in hell, particularly when he loses the Royal Rumble to Vince McMahon, and then obviously you put him in this Valentine's Day massacre with the steel cage and stuff with McMahon. It was a great payoff. I'm really glad that they went ahead, and you can hear the crowd reaction. This was the right move. These are 2 iconic superstars going head-to-head for the time. I don't think we've seen anything. Because I say WrestleMania 17, we saw some of the same 2 superstars, but I don't think we've seen similar superstars have that much sort of interest from the crowd, that much heat. If that makes sense, clearly everybody was invested, and it just shows how good wrestlers The Rock and Austin were. And I think this was one for the iconic, really. The only thing I would say that kind of disappointed me, in fact, I was a bit disappointed they did no DQ. I think they should have saved that. I think they didn't have to do no DQ. There was enough interest anyway in it, but that's a small thing. It was a great main event, if that makes sense. It went really far. I think it really took where the storyline had to go, and I think it was just one for the icon, really. I mean, it was one for the times, really, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me personally, I liked the stipulation added because with the way that they took the match, it certainly was. It was all over the arena, and I mean, you could have had some leniency from the referees. I mean, they've done that previously in previous matches on that card and in pay-per-views. The Attitude Era, of course, was to let things go just a little bit to the edgy side. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that this main event was great payoff. I agree with you that the referees were integral to the story. I thought it was fun. I think that's the thing that we could take from this main event. It was a fun watch. It wasn't just the fact it was important. It was something that you sit there and felt enjoyment the whole way through, and you know it was just cool. I mean, that's what the Attitude Era was all about, and one of the one of the highlights probably of certainly was the best part of this Mania card, and probably at the times there, the main event was the big talking point and was always the focal point of the shows, where these days you can turn around and say, yeah, well, I like that, but I'm more into this part of the show. There's normally different parts for everyone in the show. This here, I mean, it's very main event heavy, and that scene has got a lot of the storylines, a lot of the twists and turns, and nothing outshines it. And I think that was definitely a fun way, the whole way it played out.
Yeah, definitely. I think the only match I'd say that kind of came close to me from my childhood that I kind of was excited about would have been not as great in ring, obviously, would have been Warren Hulk Hogan. I remember being a kid and watching that match and having the same feeling almost of these are two unbeatable people going head to head. Which The Rock and Austin, they were so good. The fact they'd taken their feud from the Intercontinental title and they'd worked in the ring, they'd taken it up a notch. It was great to see, though, and you can see why this was the main event. I think if they would have added Mick Foley, it could have been something different, but it was great. And the fact you're getting an Austin win here had to happen. I think it was really sort of the right thing to do. If Austin would have lost, I don't know where you really go from there. I think it would have ended Mania people probably wanting refunds and booing, so to speak.
Yeah, it would have been probably a sour way to have ended it, but no, definitely a fun way to end the show. I did love as well, there was a nice touch here that Earl Hebner was brought into the ring, was involved with the beers as well with Steve Austin. I thought that was very good. They go to leave the ring, and Vince argues that with Steve Austin at the ringside area, going, "That's my belt. That's my belt." We see that Austin about to leave, but he delivers a right hand to Steve Austin. Vince McMahon, sorry, throws Vince into the ring and gives him a Stone Cold Stunner. Of course, the fans at this point love it. This was the time where Vince McMahon always knew exactly what to give the fans here. Give me a stunner to finish the night. I'll really send them home extra happy. Not only have you got the title off of me and off of the corporation, but you've beat the Rock there in a fun main event, and then you've give the stunner to me to really give the fans a happy ending to that night. For me, I thought it was the perfect finish to that Mania.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great way to go out, if it makes sense. It's perfectly what Mania should be. I think Mania has to be feel good sometimes, and the way you've obviously created this, the way you find getting that payoff of Austin win the belt it still stood standard time. Watching it today, that much older now, it's still I was pretty connected with it, considering I watched the whole build of '99 up to that point. It was a great payoff to finally get it. Even before '99, it's a great payoff to get Austin back with that title.
Absolutely. I mean, I believe, would I be wrong in saying that it was the September pay-per-view that Austin was involved, where he's pinned by The Undertaker and Kane, and it's from that point onwards he wasn't champion. So we've gone from September all the way to the end of March. So it's definitely a long build to get Austin back to that point to being the champion. Just to
say, I don't want to speak too much about the current product, but just to compare that, you look at that build. So you said September up to March to get the title back. WWE are now throwing away a challenger for Goldberg within 2 weeks. I know you've got mitigating circumstances. That's kind of, how does that make you feel compared to kind of what they did in '99? Just as an interesting discussion point.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, some years with WrestleMania, you do feel that some matches have got the longer term booking, but it feels that this year was probably the first year for a while that not so many matches had that long term booking. I mean, I think it's clear to say Becky and Shayna, that has been in the book since Survivor Series. That's probably clear to say. Roman and The Fiend was supposed to be, but like you said, that the last minute change there. Drew McIntyre apparently was not a cert for the Royal Rumble until close to the time of it. Aleister Black was someone that was in conversation that could have been in that role. So, there are, like you say, long-term booking strategies, and I do feel that, of course, long-term booking helps. You look with AEW, they don't break their booking molds. They have their plans and they stick to them, and I think sometimes that leads to better payoffs rather than keep changing your mind on the fly. I would say that WWE today has sometimes got the long-term booking ideas in mind, but I think that a lot of the time they do a lot of changes to what they want to do with their storylines, and sometimes the booking just isn't as clean as what we see here. And I think that's the major difference, is that you can have an idea in mind for 6-7 months, but unless you've got ways to really make that play out to get from A to B to C to D, that is where you're really going to make your fans invested and really get that payoff. I think the last time that you can turn around and say they really had that payoff, and again, that was an accident, but you can turn around and say it was a culmination of a great storyline from SummerSlam to WrestleMania, was the Daniel Bryan story, the miracle on Bourbon Street. That was probably the last time you could turn around and say from SummerSlam there was that real big championship build from there, and we got the payoff with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was just very interested just to hear kind of your thoughts on the comparison. Obviously, to 99 now. But yeah, it's just interesting to look back. I think hopefully this Sunday and Saturday will be a good show. I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing that. But as for 99 and going back to WrestleMania 99, I really enjoyed it. It was as you said, 3 hours 45 with the Heat show. Yeah, what a fun watch.
It certainly was a fun watch indeed. And there was only 20,276 in attendance. Goes to show with the arenas back then that obviously now, I mean, of course, this year is going to be very different. It's 20,276 more than there will be this year. But obviously, you know, we're used to stadiums now. I mean, it's just special, the feeling you got there with the arena. So, and the highlight package to finish the show. But to give it a grade overall, George, out of 10, what would you give that Mania?
I'd say 7 out of 10. I think you've got a sort of, there are some positives. The Shane McMahon X-Pac match was fantastic. The Triple H Kane match was okay. The main event, I really enjoyed it. I would say them matches I kind of enjoyed. The rest of the show was a bit hit and miss really, but I think particularly the Hell in a Cell, the Hannon women's match, it really lets the show down. It really brings it down to kind of a 7 instead of a 8 or 9 out of 10 for me.
Spot on. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think I gave it a 7 out of 10 as well. Like you said, those matches are the negatives for the show. I do feel that it were a bit rushed in the first hour, but like you say, that it's just the sign of the times there. I would have liked to have seen that play out to an hour and a half. Maybe we could have got the show to just over 3 hours long. Maybe I think would have been good. I mean, WrestleManias all throughout the years have always changed in their hours, but in the Attitude Era, they were consistent, not over 3 hour shows. I remember WrestleMania 4 being 3 hours and 45 minutes, for example. So this is not the first time that we see them dip to longer hours of WrestleMania. So, no, it was a great show overall, and I, like you say, I give it a 7 out of 10 as well. Same points really, with the two matches that were minus. The two matches that really boost it up for me to give it the high score are the main event with Rock and Austin and Shane McMahon and X-Pac. I think that those are the best, and everything just overall feels quite a fun watch. So yeah, I for me, I give it a solid 7.
Brilliant. Yeah, I agree with you. Spot on.
Definitely. Just to quickly, just before we go, George, do you want to just give us a couple of your Mania predictions that you've got for this Saturday and Sunday of matches you think, the results you think are in your head that asserts?
Yeah, go for it, Steve. More than welcome, more than happy to give you my opinion.
Yeah, okay. Well, quickly, we'll go with what's meant to be Goldberg and Braun Strowman first off.
I think they should go for Goldberg to win. I think the long-term plan obviously is Roman Reigns, but the only thing that puts me off maybe Goldberg winning is WWE obviously paying him a massive amount of money, and for him to only be there cameo appearances is risky really. It depends how desperate WWE are to get Goldberg off the wage bill, but for me, I would like to see Goldberg win. I don't really want to see Braun Strowman win. I think you're hot potato in the title belt yet again, which this title belt needs to mean something. It needs to get some longevity. If you're going to give it to Roman Reigns in 2 or 3 months, fine. And then obviously have a run with him. But I really hope that Goldberg wins it. I think if Braun Strowman wins in 2 or 3 minutes, following what Goldberg did to The Fiend, it's not going to be good viewing for me. But
no, interesting take on that. Well, you mentioned The Fiend there. How about the Firefly Funhouse match, him against John Cena?
It's got to be The Fiend, hasn't it? The Fiend has to win it. This is the Fiend's match. So if The Fiend doesn't win here, I'll be kind of disappointed. I think this match has got really interesting elements. So I really would like to see, as you said in your preview video, characters come to life. It'd be great to see sort of real life people portraying the characters, speak maybe in cameos like that. I just really hope it's better than the Randy Orton Bray match that happened a while ago at the Compound. Sorry, do you remember that match? I may not have the title right of it.
House of Horrors, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the one. I really hope it's better than that. I think this match should be good though. I think obviously Bray has got a point to prove. John Cena obviously has got a point to prove. John doesn't need to win here. Bray and the Fiend probably does need. He needs to get his momentum back a bit. And I think this could be a good match. In fact, they're able to hit it and it's not live now. I think will mean that it'll be a good match. I'm interested. It's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to watching Mania is this match, definitely.
Absolutely. How about the Boneyard match? Undertaker, AJ Styles.
Oh, it should be good. Obviously, a graveyard match, basically. It'll be interesting to see. AJ Styles, what a fantastic worker. And as you said, he can be anywhere in the card. He doesn't have to win here. But I would really love to see AJ Styles get a win here. But I just can't see him beating The Undertaker in his own match. So I think Undertaker's going to win here. I just hope the OC and the rest of the kind of AJ Styles stable don't get buried here. But should be a good match. Once again, probably maybe a location again, which will make it refreshing. You're not seeing it just in that empty performance centre, which will be nice.
I think, yeah, it makes a nice change of pace having it somewhere in a different location. One thing I didn't say in my predictions video, which I'll just quickly say here, if this was not WrestleMania, I would have predicted AJ Styles, but because it's WrestleMania, that's why I've gone for The Undertaker. I won't keep you too much longer, George. Just go through a couple more of those matches for you. The Raw Women's Championship, Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler.
I'm with you here. Shayna has to win. I think you put her up for months now. If she doesn't win it, it'll look pretty poor. But the way she's done with Becky Lynch on Raw this week was kind of I was a bit surprised they did that. I thought they'd paint the picture that Becky's got a chance. But yeah, Shayna to win it. I think she has to win. Makes sense. Totally. Becky Lynch has had the belt for ages now.
She has. She's had it for nearly a full calendar year. Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, NXT Women's Championship.
For me, I think really you've got to go for Rhea Ripley. I think it will do nothing for Charlotte Flair to win the belt here. Although Charlotte Flair won the Rumble, I don't really get Charlotte Flair winning does anything. Although it would give a lift to NXT, it's all down to whether NXT really want to compete with AEW in the ratings. I think that's the only reason why I could see Charlotte winning here. But I'm going to go for Rhea Ripley. I think you've got to have so many baby faces win to a certain point. So I'm going to go Rhea Ripley. Yeah,
certainly indeed. Edge and Randy Orton, last man standing.
Has to be Edge, doesn't it? What a build! I have to say this. I'm not a massive fan of the current product, but the build to this match has been unbelievable. And Edge's work since he's come back at the Royal Rumble, and the work he's done with Randy Orton, the promos, the way Randy Orton attacked Beth Phoenix, it's just been very inventive for current WWE. And I really think this match has got the potential to be magical. I think this is WrestleMania worthy. If any of the matches are WrestleMania, this is WrestleMania, but has to be Edge here. I think Edge has to get his momentum here. I really would like to see Edge win here and then kick on to maybe like another feud.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. And I totally agree with you. I thought it's been 10 out of 10, that one. Just a quick minor feud very quickly before we go one more match after that. Otis and Dolph Ziggler.
I'm with you, though. Obviously, going back to your preview video, as I said, this needs a crowd. As you said, I agree with you spot on. This is okay. I think in ring, it's not going to be aesthetically pleasing. I hope they maybe pay this off a bit, but then I don't know what they will. I think... you're probably going to get... I'm not really too sure. Do you go for Otis to win without the crowd there popping? Probably not. I'm probably going to go with... I think maybe sort of Dolph wins it, but then Mandy goes with Otis in the end or something like that. It's really hard. I really wouldn't know which way this is going to go without a crowd. It makes it hard to predict.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in one way it keeps it interesting as well. But like you say, if Dolph was to win there, they could extend the feud to when they get a crowd. So there's no need to rush payoff. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great point you make there. One more match then we'll ask for you then. We'll ask for about the Brock Lesnar versus Drew McIntyre WWE Championship.
I really hope it's Drew. They can't. Although I do see the reason why people don't want Drew with a no crowd there. The problem you might have, this might be one actually where you do a no contest. I would say that's the route I would go if I was booking it. You don't want to have this payoff for Drew ultimately getting the belt back. This is a guy obviously that was flagged by WWE many months ago. Came back. He's come back stronger than ever. And if you look where he's come from, 3-man band to now challenging for the world title, it's a fantastic journey. I think the fact if you're going to pay this off, no fans there, it'll be really bad. So I really hope they go a no contest here. You can't have Brock lose though, or Drew be pinned. So you have to do a no contest here, really.
Interesting. I like it. Well, thank you for your thoughts on WrestleMania 36. Anyway, it's good to get your take on a lot of the major matches there.
No problem.
Just to say as well, yes, I have got my predictions on the channel as well already. If you haven't seen them already, go and check them out there for you. If you've got a spare 20 minutes or so, you can go and check them out. Got all the full card and all the changes and predictions for you there to check out as well. But we hope you've enjoyed this. It's been great to do a retro as always. I believe, George, you were going to go back to Nitro next week. We're going to go and do a couple of episodes of Monday Nitro from 1995. I believe the first 2 episodes in October of 95, I do believe, on the road to Halloween Havoc. So if you've not seen that, you can go and check that out. And yeah, as always, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. It's great to have you guys involved as always here, watching here on SCW. George, is there anything you'd like to add before we finish off today?
No, thank you for having me again. I really hope everyone's enjoyed watching it, and thank you everybody for taking the time to watch this video. I really hope everyone enjoys WrestleMania, enjoy the show, and thank you for continuing to watch your videos. Really appreciate it.
Yes, definitely indeed. Well, we wish you all the best, guys. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time here on YouTube.com. This is George and myself here from SCW. Thank you very much.